And then he was off to look for yëwënta. And yëwënta, at this time, he was taking those shells and he was breaking them. And he would take the shells and break them, and he was making them into strings of shell beads. And he was drilling them and polishing them and shaping them. And while he was doing this, it took his mind off of his sorrows. And you know, he's making these strings of beads. And as he's doing this, the peacemaker finally catches up to him. And as the peacemaker catches up to him, he watches what he's doing. And he sees that yëwënta is doing something that's taking his mind off of his sorrow. And in a way, this is good medicine. So he takes a string, these strands of this shell beads. As he's taking these and putting them on the strings, he goes to and decides to console his friend and to lift him up. And he uses and grabs those shells, those strings of shell beads, the peacemaker does, and he talks to yëwënta. And he tells him, brother, he says, it's true. He says, you suffered a great loss. He says, and it's okay. It's okay for you to be sad for a time. And he says, but now I'm going to help you. And he gives him his condolences. And he has what's called a condolence for him. And he tells him, you know, he says that when we lose somebody and we can't stop crying like that, we get a lump in our throat, he says, and I'm going to use this wampum, he says, and I'm going to wipe it. Wipe the throat, wipe the lump from your throat, remove the lump from your throat. He says, and it's true that when you're crying all the time, that you have tears in your eyes and you can't see. So I'm going to use this wampum and I'm going to wipe the tears from your eyes. He says, and I'm going to condole you. I'm going to give you my condolence. And I'm going to sympathize with you, if only for one day. He says that it's true. But I'm going to restore your vision, he says, and now you can see again. You can see clearly. Because I'm wiping the tears from your eyes using the wampum. He tells him, he says, you know, he says that when we're crying like that, we can't hear good. So I'm going to use this wampum and I'm going to clear your ears so that now you can be restored and so that you can hear again. And he says, I'm going to sympathize with you, if only for one day. And as he goes through this process, he stands him back up. And he tells him, now we have this great duty. We have this great message to spread and to share with the people, that we need to bring them together. And now they have this tool, this aid. They're going to use wampum, the shell beads, because if it can make a person that's very sad and restore them and condole them, maybe, just maybe, it'll work and help somebody that's been poisoned. So together, they decide they're going to go and continue to spread the message. The Seneca territory, and they come to our territory, and when they come here, we're fierce and we're warlike, and our war chiefs are in charge. And the Oneida people turn them away, and they say, we don't want peace because that's a sign of weakness. And they say, we don't want to hear this. So the Peacemaker and yëwënta camp outside of Oneida territory. And while they're camping out there, they come to this, the Peacemaker comes to this idea. And they say, we need to get back in there and talk to them again. So they go back the next day. And when they talk this time to the Oneida chiefs, the war chiefs, they use this idea and they take a single arrow. And they show those war chiefs, they said, you know, here's you Oneida people, you know, and they break that arrow. It's pretty easily, it can be broken. And they take 5 arrows and tie them together. And he says, okay, now who's your strongest guy? So they send their strongest guy up there and they say, okay, now here, you break these. And it's all those 5 arrows that are tied together. And when they take the 5 arrows this time that are tied together, they say, okay, let's have your strong guy, go ahead, break it. And he tries to break it, and he can't. Tries again, can't break it. And yëwënta and the Peacemaker demonstrate to those Oneida war chiefs that in unity is strength. And they says, you Oneida people are warriors. And that if you agree to join this house of peace, we'll make you guys the doorkeepers of the western door. So if anybody tries to attack or cause trouble from the west, you guys will be in charge. And instead of having your 10,000 warriors, imagine you'll have 5,000 from here, you'll have maybe 5 from here, 5 from here, and another 10 from Mohawks. Imagine being in charge of, instead of 10,000, all of those thousands of warriors. And the Oneida people, the war chiefs, accepted yëwënta. And they came into this house of peace and became known as the keepers of the western door. The Ganyan people look and watch to the east for any trouble that's coming from there. So now they decided they had to go and talk and convince the holdout Attotaro. So they take wampum this time, and they take chiefs and they go to see him. And when they go there, they get to his island. Some of those guys that are just along that really don't believe in yëwënta, they got scared. And they says, well, we'll stay here. They wouldn't go in their boats. They went across and they got to the shore. Some of those chiefs from those tribes got scared. They got a little closer and they could hear him hollering. He's hollering in the distance, telling him, Sigua, telling him to go away. He don't want to hear it. He knows they're coming because he's got that dark power. Only the ones that were strong and pure kept going. And they said that as they getting closer to him, he's nasty, he's fierce. That he, imagine he stinks, you know? And that as they're getting closer, some of those guys got sick and they couldn't go on for any further and they stopped there. But the strong ones kept going, and that they have with them this wampum. And they have the strings of wampum, and they have a song. They're singing a song of peace. And as they sing that song of peace, they go up to him, and they use that wampum, and they comb the snakes from his hair. And they use it to ease this poison that had been bothering him all this time. It was meant to kill him, but it didn't. And they restored Attotaro back to being a human. And when they restored him, they told him, they says, well, Onondake is in the middle. Whenever we have a grand council, You guys will be the council fire keepers. Onondake. That'll be your job. And they gave him a title. And what happened at that time was they said, since you're a new man, Attotaro, since you're a new man, we're going to give you a new name. And his new name is Tadodahoh. Those leaders are symbolized by a gastoet with deer horns on it. And that they're the only ones that can wear that. That's what it means. And Tadodahoh, now and to this day, somebody has that title. The Peacemaker said, okay, we want you to use your mind that you have this great power. And we want you to tell everybody in all of 5 nations to come to Onondake. And that when they come here, they're supposed to bring their weapons of war. And they told them, okay, I want you warriors to stand around this, and when I give the signal, throw your weapons of war in this hole. And he says, okay, now, he says, I want all you warriors to throw in the bad feelings, because now we need to have this peace. So they buried it. And when they buried it, he planted our symbol of peace, which is the white pine. This great white pine, anybody wanting to live in peace, all they have to do is follow these white roots of peace from this white pine, and they can live here peacefully. And they placed as a lookout, a sentry at the top. Yëwënta, the eagle. And that anything coming to cause us harm, he'll holler. This peace was started, and the people prospered. And now, instead of being poor, didn't have to worry about warfare all the time with each other, and that they became strong. We had a way of keeping track. We had a way of keeping our history straight and passing it on. And we didn't use words. We didn't write words. But what we did was we had pictures to tell a story. And this story that I just told is told in this symbol. Every part of it is told in wampum.